Hello and welcome to The Y Word, the podcast that gets under the skin of entrepreneurs, business people, and basically anyone who makes things happen and asks why they do what they do. My name is Ian Hawkins, and in this episode you'll hear.
So businesses that don't reinvent themselves, don't put their business under a lens of how do we transform ourselves, are not going to be able to stay relevant. I think if you're in a business where you want the outcome for your customers to be amazing and you want to wow them and you want to drive trust and loyalty, you can't have crappy processes that you're trapping people in. You know, the people that you lead, they go home and they talk about you over the dinner table because the impact of your leadership is either going to resonate in a positive way in that person's family or a negative way. Do you want to be the positive story at the table or the negative story at the table?
Today, I'm talking to Samantha Johnson, Director Customer Contact Center for Citizens Bank. Formerly, she was Vice President at Blue Cross NC and has been responsible for overseeing transformations and operations within a highly specialized business. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here with you, Ian.
Fabulous. So why do you think transformation has become such a big issue for companies around the world recently?
Well, I think just the whole global aspect of business now where you have to innovate and transform to just be competitive as well as to stay ahead of new things. And so one of the greatest things that we've seen with this COVID situation that we've had around the world is tons of innovation and transformation. So businesses that don't reinvent themselves, don't put their business under a lens of how do we transform ourselves, are not going to be able to stay relevant.
Because transformation's been a big thing in process excellence and operational excellence for the last year, so many people have been talking about it. One of the big resistance factors has been, you can't just switch a company off, move the furniture and switch it back on again. But it seems to me that the COVID lockdown actually is enabling some companies to do just that. Do you think people are taking advantage of it?
I think some companies definitely are. You know, the bigger the company, the more degrees of freedom I think that they've been able to have. But I've just been so amazed at small businesses, small restaurants, turning on a dime to be able to do takeaway and keep their business going when they were completely shut down. So I've seen also in my two organizations that I have been in, going from, I don't think we can work from home to 98% of their employees working from home over 3 weeks. It's a burning platform. And so you have to look at that as an opportunity. And sometimes you have to create your own burning platform.
I think the restaurant thing is really interesting because a lot of businesses are changing their delivery. The problem with a restaurant is not the product, it's the delivery. You can't sit in a room and have your food brought to you. So it has to become a takeaway. Is that quite a good analogy of digital transformation across the board?
You have to rethink and redefine your business at a very quick rate. And digital transformation certainly helps with that. And I would say businesses have been transforming, well beyond a year or two. I think they've just been doing it in different ways. Usually a transformation is a business model change or getting into a new market, putting on new products, transforming a culture. Now it's bringing in technical tools where you can radically and very quickly transform your entire business, driving down your costs, increasing productivity, increasing satisfaction for your employees and your customers.
Yeah, some of those technological answers are in themselves transformational, things like RPA. But how is that? What sort of resistance are you experiencing towards that kind of technology?
Having to rethink what you've done for the past 10 or 15 years and step back from it and say, well, I don't need to do it that way. I have these tools that can strip down this process to nothing. So then that invokes human fear. But I think that's where it takes leadership to step up and drive a case for change and help people connect to build the new skills that they need and help them see a path forward.
Not everybody has the entrepreneurial or glass half full view of the leadership, do they? So is that an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an issue, especially if you're not connected with your employees and your staff, and you're trying to do this big scale change and people don't understand why. And people come to the table with what's in it for me. And if you're not making a case on what's in it for me, for them, and how they're going to be a part of this solution, they will lean out and they will distance themselves from it and go into a mode of it's just not going to happen. I just ignore it and it'll all go away. And so what you want to do is hear people and understand what's their fear and their concern and their challenges, and then work to have them be part of the solution.
There's a Peter Drucker quote, which I'm going to mangle for you right now. And it seems very relevant at this time, which is he says that a leader is someone that can look after people better than they can look after themselves. It occurs to me at this time when we're talking about reopening businesses in the middle of this pandemic that your perception of the leadership, that could possibly change quite radically along those lines. Has this person got my best interests at heart?
I think that trust drives a lot of that. And if your people don't trust you as a leader and they are not seeing that you care, they don't see you as a vulnerable leader. And I think vulnerability is a huge thing to leadership these days, especially in connecting people, then, they're not going to feel confident. And in order for them to trust you, you have to listen and you have to hear what their concerns are. And a lot of times, I think with people being perhaps really busy and in the rush and bustle of life, leaders don't slow down enough to actually hear what's concerning to their employees. Once you get to what's the concern and there's an open dialogue and communication, there's so many things that can be solved as a unit and a team that will help build that trust.
I always think of process and operations, which is the world in which you've done most of your work. I think of that as the stuff that people just do day to day. Why is it so important that people get that right?
Well, I think we've all experienced really bad processes and the frustration that it creates to us. I think if you're in a business where you want the outcome for your customers to be amazing and you want to wow them and you want to drive trust and loyalty, you can't have crappy processes that you're trapping people in. And you also can't be so distant from your processes to not know how your organization is performing, as well as how you can improve it for your customers. Business value and customer value are closely linked. And no customers, no revenue, no profit, no employment, no anything. But I think the most critical component of a business is their people. You can't have great processes and performance without amazing, engaged people.
Well, that brings us on to the next question I have written down here about robots. And I guess people are worried about robots taking over their jobs. Is that really going to happen?
Well, I've seen it in the movies, but I don't know that we're close to it at this point. A lot of the RPA, robotic process automation that I've been a part of has really been more around digital assistance, how to help people be more effective. I mean, who wants to sit there? You're talking to a customer, for example, and you're a customer service representative, and you're cutting and pasting across multiple systems, where you could put in a bot and that bot is working side by side with that agent, making that whole experience basically streamlined for that rep, and they're able to focus and listen to that customer. How many businesses out there are run by Excel spreadsheets and they're trying to fill in gaps of systems communicating with each other, and they can't do it outside of the Excel spreadsheet or some type of macro because it's so costly to do integrations? Well, robotic process automation can help with those types of things that create light integration between your systems. I think it was people look at, I'm afraid of a robot taking over my work or my life. I think if we shift our thought in terms of how can it make me be able to do more value added work, I think that's where I would like to see people focus on. Take away the drudgery, take the robot out of the human, and let the human actually do what humans are great at.
Sure. I was going to say, do you think that a lot of people start businesses with a big idea, and then they really struggle to see the stuff on the ground, the operations and the processes. They struggle to make those work.
And I think it comes down to, you can have a great idea or a great strategy, but can you execute it? I think, to do those things, you can't be on an island. You have to put a team around you that helps uplift and augment your skill set. So a great entrepreneur is not going to want to get their energy, they won't get their energy out of process and organizational effectiveness. They're going to get it on chasing the new thing. Whereas if they have a partner with them that does like how to run a business and likes all the cranking out the numbers and the processes and the performance, that's a great partnership. I think it's, how do you bring together the right people to form a team that everybody thrives and able to drive to the outcomes you're trying to get to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I know quite a lot of businesses which seem to have two people at the top. And one is very clearly the head and one is very clearly the heart. And one will make all the decisions about money and the other one will make all the decisions about, what do we do next? What market do we go into? How do we please this customer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you're saying the head and the heart, because everybody needs to have aligned heads and hearts as they lead and as they operate in their business. But I do think it is about diversity, inclusion, getting the voices to the table, making space for different ideas, and being humble enough to let those other folks tell you when, maybe that isn't the best idea. But you have to have, great relationships and respect and trust in those teams and in those voices at the table. And you have to listen to what's being said and what's not being said. So if you have a team, you put a provocative idea and nobody speaks up, you got an issue.
Do you think there's a part to play in operations to promote diversity?
I think there's a role in every part of your business to promote diversity. I think that leaders have to be open to look around the table and not only note what's absent, but they also have to look around and make space, invite people to the table, but also say that I'm not going to engage in that if we don't have diverse voices at the table. You have to recognize your role as a leader is to also drive the change for more diverse and inclusive situations.
Talking to Samantha, you get the impression of someone that's really passionate about making sure that the nuts and bolts of a job actually get done. It's not just, the top line, the big strategy, the big ideas. It's actually also going in there. And I was always told that process and operations were kind of a dry subject. But when you hear somebody like Samantha really embracing these ideas, you go, no, it is actually important, and that is enough to hang some enthusiasm on. So let's leave leadership to one side. I was very interested in how she's changing her own career, because she's gone from, very recently, she's had a big career change from healthcare into banking. So I wanted to find out what had driven that change. Samantha Johnson, 23 years at Blue Cross. Why did you feel the need to change?
I had been in healthcare close to 30 years across two health insurers. And I recognized that everything old is new again. I had been to a point where I wasn't sure I was going to grow and do all that I wanted to in my career. So I'm a builder by nature. I love to build things. I'm more of an entrepreneur all my career. So it was time to go do transformation at another company and in another industry.
But you chose a really interesting time to do it. I can't believe that COVID-19 had anything to do with your decision. But if you'd known then what has unfolded since March, would you have changed your path at all?
No.
That's fine. That is a clearer answer than any politician has given for the last quarter.
No.
I tell you what, we'll bring it back to something you mentioned earlier, which is vulnerability. Do you think you've learned to be, I don't want to say learn to be more vulnerable as time has gone on, but have you learned to leverage it and use vulnerability better?
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, when I started in my career in banking, you didn't talk about, work and personal life together. You might have had beer at the end of the week with some of the folks you worked with, but it was very much command and control and very much different. And so to have a vulnerable, open leader to, talk about things that weren't just black and white, it wasn't on the horizon. As I learned to lead, I had that as a backdrop. And then now, say over the last, 5 to 8 years, it's all about vulnerability and authenticity and putting yourself out there. It took a while for me to make that shift because I was like, that's not the way we were taught in business. That's not what I learned in business school. But going back to what we talked about before, aligning and connecting the head and the heart for not only yourself to drive authenticity, but to also help people with that. I had a mentor say to me, which really nailed this in me and really became the catalyst for me to change my mindset on this, was, the people that you lead, they go home and they talk about you over the dinner table because the impact of your leadership is either going to resonate in a positive way in that person's family or a negative way. Do you want to be the positive story at the table or the negative story at the table? And I was like, well, I want to be positive, of course. And they said, well, you need to shift your leadership style because nobody wants a command and control. Nobody wants to, in a situation where it's really negative and you don't feel like you're able to succeed and you don't get any positive feedback and you don't see your boss, making mistakes. So you feel like you can't. So it's all of that.
A lot of people talk about the notion of professionalism. Oh, your behavior has been unprofessional. And I think what they mean by that is that somebody has a style that they're not comfortable with. Do you think that businesses can actually cope if they still keep that command and control strategy? Do you think they're setting themselves up for a fall?
I think that command and control and hierarchy is probably the death knell in this fifth generation or fifth industrial revolution. And the reason for that is it makes organizations incredibly inflexible, and they don't have the agility to transform themselves. And their people aren't agile. They're not thinking about things in terms of a growth mindset. It's very fixed. I recognize that hierarchy is important from I need to know how things get done and where the accountability is. But I also think you have to be able to maneuver that hierarchy in a very streamlined way. So for me, it's how do I break down those barriers or those perceived barriers of hierarchy in my organizations that I lead? I want that person closest to the customer or closest to the work to never feel like they can't speak to me or bring an idea or bring a concern. That doesn't mean they don't respect their leadership. It just means that we have open communication and we're working to get rid of all the bureaucracy. So I do think organizations need to be very careful when they're very rigid and very hierarchical, and you can't talk to anybody of a certain level in an organization, and you have to be careful what you say, and it just creates politics and drama that takes away from your customer.
Yeah, that idea that if you say the wrong thing, then you're out and you're persona non grata, that can't be healthy.
It can't, and I think again, as we were talking earlier, with diversity and inclusion and culture are critical. I mean, an important thing is, of course, your strategy. But can you disrupt yourself? Can you grow as an organization? And can you thrive? That's all people. You can have the best processes that the world has ever seen. But if you have crappy minded leaders and staving off growth mindsets and not being an entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial minded, that culture is going to just choke that organization. And, no company wants that.
No, indeed. Change just seems to be something that you are particularly comfortable with. How did this happen? Why are you so comfortable with this notion of change? You say it's about a growth mindset, but it's also about, I think about a willingness to do something different.
Yeah. Part of it is perhaps my DNA. I came to the United States as a very young child, as an immigrant from the UK. And with that, I think, and growing up in a very diverse neighborhood in Boston, I learned a lot about resiliency and change and being out of my comfort zone. I also knew that in order to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve, which was to be in business, I've known that ever since I was a small child, that I was going to have to really work to do well in school and get a degree and take risks and chances. So when I graduated high school, went to my undergraduate business college, was told I couldn't get in by the guidance counselor because I was a girl. And I fought back on that. And I said, nope, that doesn't feel right. So my mom went down and had a few words. And the next thing you know, guidance counselor was helping me getting to business school. But after business school, I said, well, let's go do something else. I was running an IT organization for a bank, moved up, uprooted everything with my husband at the time, and we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. So I think, my DNA has always been pretty fearless and loving change. But it's also, that might be a strength, but it's also a weakness as a leader. And I have to remind myself, just because I love change and I love to build new things and I love to move mountains and take risks, that isn't the majority of the world and the majority of the people that I lead. So I have to make sure I don't overplay that strength.
Samantha Johnson, I have one last question for you. It is the dinner party game. So, but the twist is, it's a business lunch. You can have anybody you like. They can be alive, they can be dead, they can be fictional, but it has to be a business lunch to further your career or your career interests.
Just one person?
I'm afraid so.
Oh, gosh. Ian, one person. Okay, Winston Churchill.
Oh, why Winston? I hope that you're going to not be paying for the drinks because he'll get through them, but why Winston Churchill?
Is because, one, his absolutely unwavering commitment to leading through adversity, transforming in a time of incredible difficulty. And he didn't have a lot of support for a lot of what he wanted to do. But his unwavering belief and commitment to that, love the way that he problem solved and thought about things. I think that even though he is seen, as fairly eccentric, but even with all that depression, mental health, he was an absolute force of nature.
Well, I agree with that. Samantha Johnson, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been great, Ian.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks to Samantha Johnson. If you would like to find out more about today's guest, you can find links in the show notes. That's also where you'll find the Why Words contact details if you know of a great guest waiting to join us on the show. From me, Ian Hawkins, have a great time. Till next time.